Far from home, no one will ever know our names, but the bard songs will remain. Tomorrow all will be known, and you're not alone, so don't be afraid in the dark and cold, but the bard songs will remain. They all will remain in my thoughts and in my dreams. They're always in my mind. These songs of hobbits, dwarves and men, and elves, come close your eyes. Tomorrow will take us away, far from home. No one will ever know our names, but the bard songs will remain. They all will remain.
Well, most people would say it began when Demi Moore, the actress, did a photo shoot of herself pregnant. She was nude, but she had her, important parts covered up. At the time, it was very controversial, and since then there have been a lot of imitators, and now it's not quite as controversial as it used to be when Demi Moore first did her photo shoot. But at that time, it was very unique. I don't think you can say that the trend towards finally showing pregnancy in films and in television and in other genres can be all attributed to that one photo that Demi Moore did, because I think there were a combination of many things that helped start the pregnancy boom in the 1990s. But Demi Moore's cover was certainly one of them. It started a trend that had not been seen before, because up until that decade, prior to it, you did not see pregnant women hardly ever in any way, shape, or form. Certainly in movies and television you had women that were pregnant in their shows or their respective movies, but the pregnancy was always covered up very much, and very unflattering dresses and material that tended to cover up the pregnant belly and hide it. And as much as possible, people would try not to even use the word pregnant up until, the 1980s and 90s, really. And pregnancy was just something you did not see a lot of in movies and film. It was always very fake. It was always very hidden, poor quality. And certainly in real life, when women were pregnant, they never showed off their bellies, or even attempted to wear anything that would look beautiful or flattering for their figure. It was generally believed that pregnancy was a time when women would not spend a lot of money on clothes to look beautiful. They would just, buy something that would feel comfortable on them, and that's it. So most of the clothes looked awful, because the general idea was that pregnant women will not spend money, just for a period of 9 months. They just want something that feels comfortable. They don't care how they look. So that's why you saw the moo-moo maternity dresses, as they're called, and the really ugly ones and the really strange-looking ones. There was an attempt, really, for many years to make pregnant women almost look like little girls in a way, with the outfits they had. I suppose that was an attempt to make them look cute, but it didn't, and it looked very silly and ridiculous. Not sure exactly why they went that route, but again, people, at least in this country, in the United States, have been very very skittish when it comes to pregnancy, and I've always had a very strange attitude about it up until recent times. And in other parts of the world, I'm sure they did too. But after Demi Moore did that cover, there was a slow but gradual progression in the way we see pregnant women now. From everything from movies and entertainment to the average pregnant woman on the street and what she wore and how she thought about herself. But it was slow. You know, in the 1990s, you could see a few movies if you were lucky, and some of you know them. One that comes to my mind is Ready to Wear, where you actually saw a bare belly. Whether it was fake or not, it wasn't the point. The point is they were finally showing bare bellies on screen, which had not been done before ever. For the most part, especially in movies and television, pregnant bellies were always fake, of course, but they were never they never tried to get like prosthetics to show the actual bare belly. They would usually use pillows or something like that, you know, stuff something under the shirt, like a little ball or something. It would not be very good. You had occasional exceptions, of course, but for the most part, it didn't look good. And in the 90s, every now and then you saw, you know, a little bit of a scene, a little bit of something that stood out in your mind that was just wonderful. And you know, for my generation, those of us who grew up in the 90s as kids, it was something to see, because prior to that, we never saw ever a bare pregnant belly of any kind whatsoever on screen, on television. It was very rare to see pregnant women at all, actually. And in the 90s, you see, slowly but surely, pregnancy starting to be reintroduced into films and television. And, you know, suddenly you could see a woman pregnant. Now, it's nothing like we have nowadays. When you saw a woman pregnant on screen back then, it was still covered up, but it was more shapely. Some of them were. Others, not so much. But even that was a major leap, because for the most part you never saw women pregnant on screen at all. And in a very rare treat, you might actually get a woman who was pregnant in real life as an actress, and they would write that pregnancy into the television show or the film. Didn't happen a lot, but it did happen. And I don't think that would have happened, you know, in the 80s, and certainly not any decade prior to that. But there were other things that contributed to this pregnancy boom. About the mid-90s, there was a magazine that came out. A magazine that was nothing like anything anybody had ever seen before. I remember when I first saw it, it was at Walmart's. And that was called Fit Pregnancy. Fit Pregnancy was, for all of us who were pregnancy lovers, where we went to get pregnancy content. I mean, it had every issue. It was dedicated to pregnancy. It was for pregnant women. But what it had in there were actual, real-life pregnant models. And they had models showing their bellies. Not just on their pregnant, but they would be showing their tummies. It was unbelievable. You're going to have to understand, this is the 1990s. Nothing like that had ever happened before. And the woman responsible for that was Lisa Lang, if I remember her name correctly. And around about that same time, another event happened that changed the face of pregnancy forever. Another woman named Lisa Ramirez. She created a modeling agency for pregnant women called Expecting Models. Now, there had never been an agency that was ever dedicated exclusively for pregnant models. Generally what happened was when, say, a maternity store wanted to advertise its outfits for pregnant women, they would usually get just a model who wasn't pregnant, and they would stuff something under her shirt, and she would look pregnant in the, shirt or dress or whatever it was, and they would put her on the cover. But I mean, every now and then you had a pregnant model, but it was very rare. Lisa Ramirez was a model, and she was pregnant, and she had a hard time finding work. She had to do a lot of it on her own to get work during her pregnancy. And so she created Expecting Models because of her own experiences that she had as a pregnant model trying to get work. She changed the face of the modeling industry when it came to pregnancy. Now you had an agency exclusively for pregnant models who would go there when they were pregnant, who still wanted to work, and agencies like Fit Pregnancy, which dealt with pregnancy in every issue. They suddenly had a good supply, if you will, to go to for their pregnant models. They had Expecting Models, and they could always get real-life pregnant women. You didn't have to worry about faking them and making them look pregnant. They were pregnant. And, you know, they would show off their bellies. You could see their tummies. You could, you know, have them model all the outfits just the right way because they were actually pregnant. And so those two women and those two things, Fit Pregnancy and Expecting Models, transformed our culture here in America, and I think the world as well, because now you had real pregnant women. You had a magazine dedicated to pregnant women, and every month it would show real pregnant women. I collected them very often back then. Remember, the internet is, you know, it was still kind of a new thing, and we hadn't really gotten into the internet very much. So magazines like Fit Pregnancy and a few others that came along after it were a great source for pregnancy content. It was just amazing. It was expensive, but not as expensive as it is today. But it was still a very good source if you wanted to see real pregnant women. Now, speaking of the internet, well, that's another thing that transformed pregnancy, and it contributed to this pregnant boom, as I call it, in the 1990s. What happened was, people of my generation, when we started to get old enough to be on the internet, and when we were allowed to be on the internet, would search around, of course, for anything that interested us. And of course, one of the things that interested us most was pregnant women. Now, I can't remember exactly when I first searched and looked up, pregnant women on the internet, but I remember doing it mid to late 90s. And you didn't find much. Then later I remember starting to find there was pornography out there that was dedicated to pregnant women, but that's not what I was looking for. But that's when I first realized something. If there was pornography, that had pregnant women in it, well then obviously there were people like me out there that liked pregnant women. For me, this was the first hint that I wasn't alone, that I wasn't just this one person in the world who found pregnant women to be attractive. And it may just be that other people, found out that way as well, when they went on the internet. I didn't know anybody. There were no forums yet. There was no place dedicated to people who liked pregnant women, on the internet. But it was the first hint that there must be at least some other people out there like me who were attracted to pregnant women. Of course, I wasn't looking for pornography. I've always liked sexy, not dirty. That's been my taste. But that's the revelation about, the internet and the impact it had. Later on, in the very late 90s, we finally started to discover sites that were dedicated for people who liked pregnant women, who were pregnancy lovers. And they had a name for it. Masophiliac, it was a name that I could never pronounce. But it was the first time I had heard the word. It had a name. And the first two sites that I came to were Pumpkin Belly's Patch And then that led me to Cheviot's site, Cheviot's forums. Those two sites opened up my mind to a world where I finally knew for certain there were other people like me who were pregnancy lovers. Prior to the internet, you had no way of knowing that anybody else in the world had an attraction to pregnant women, because pregnancy lovers are not open about their love of pregnancy, and they still are not. And there's a variety of reasons for that. We're afraid of what people will think of us. We think we're alone. We think, people will look at us as freaks or, heaven forbid, something worse. So we don't talk about it. We never talk about it in public. Most of us don't. I do, but that's another story. But the internet played a huge, huge role in changing the way we look at pregnancy. It created the pregnant community. The internet was the only place where men could go, and some women, where they could go and be open and honest about their attraction to pregnant women. Suddenly people start talking, they start getting together, they start sharing photos, videos, magazines like Fit Pregnancy and others, and you find you're not alone. And it was wonderful. It was just a major, major moment in the pregnant community, because we found out that we actually were not alone. People not just in this country, but in all over the world had this attraction. And, I could do a whole video about that alone. But the internet was certainly the biggest contributor to the pregnant community and the pregnancy boom of the 1990s. And what happened was, the internet, magazines like Fit Pregnancy, a modeling agency like Expecting Models, and Demi Moore's pregnancy cover all contributed to the pregnancy boom of the 1990s. Now, it was slow in its progress, and it's still a work in progress, I think. We have not reached yet that moment where we can say pregnancy has gone completely mainstream. It's a lot more mainstream than it used to be. But there is still resistance to the idea that pregnancy is attractive. And as long as we have those barriers, as long as we have that kind of resistance, we have a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of work to do. But we've certainly come very far from where we were in the beginning of the 1990s. And it all started, the pregnant community, the pregnancy boom, it all began in the 1990s. And that's why the 1990s is really, you could say, the decade that pregnancy finally starts to go mainstream. People who love pregnancy suddenly start to get together with people, thanks to the invention of the internet. And so I can safely say that the decade of the 1990s was not just a turning point, but the turning point for pregnancy, for pregnant women, and certainly for pregnancy lovers.